I'm David I'm here in Scotts Valley, California, and I'm here with Anders Olsen.
Good morning.
And Christine Ellis is also online. And we're recording these as well so that we'll have replays for you if you missed any part of it or if you miss a lesson during the series. And this is I think it's 9 weeks of Thursdays at 10 o'clock for Delphi developers getting started with Windows and Mac development. There is a course book that I'm building for this Getting Started series. And the course book will, you're seeing it in the Word document. It'll be an evolving document over the next 9 weeks. And we'll be putting it up for you to have starting Tuesday. The first lesson is in there, and it will grow up to be a multi-100-page book over time. And everyone who's registered will be able to get to it. This is course for people who are new to programming or want to brush up on your skills. And again, I want to thank you all for being here. Each week we'll go for about 30 minutes, 15-minute Q&A session. So once you've registered for the whole series, and you'll get reminders that to come to the class at 10 a.m. Pacific time or whatever the time slot is in your local time zone. So the goals of this course are to increase your knowledge of doing Windows and Mac development. We're going to be using the FireMonkey business application platform to do our Macintosh and Windows development with one code base. We want to make sure that you can understand and are comprehending the materials. And so the course book is there, plus links to other information that we have on our website or on other websites, videos and so on, blog posts, articles, white papers, to help you not only take the course information, but be able to understand it and put it into your own application development that you need to do, and ultimately be able to build applications. And as new opportunities for building Windows and Macintosh applications, you'll be able to adapt the things that you learn and the capabilities of our products and FireMonkey to these new kinds of software problems. This is my list of recommended but not required hardware and software. And I'll tell you about the configuration that many of us use here. You can have a PC running Windows 7. If you want to do the 64-bit parts, then having a 64-bit version of Windows. But the IDE for Delphi runs on 32-bit Windows as well. But again, if you want to build, and you can build 64-bit applications, but if you want to debug them, you need to target. And we'll talk about how you can do that from a 32-bit machine. It'd be great if you have a Macintosh or a MacBook, a notebook, or a Mac Mini that's running the latest version of OS 10 Lion, but you can have Snow Leopard as well. Just Lion is the latest one. And you should have any other hardware and software requirements that are on the data sheet for Rad Studio XE2 or Delphi XE2 in your case. What I'm running on here is I've got a MacBook Pro that's running OS 10 Lion, and I'm running VMware Fusion for the Macintosh from VMware. And I have a guest operating system, which is Windows 7 64-bit, that I am running Microsoft Word, for example, in the IDE in. And I switch back and forth between the guest operating system for Windows and the Macintosh when I need to do Macintosh development, debugging, deploying. And also for doing iOS development, I need to have a Macintosh to be able to get to my iOS devices, iPhone, iPad, or to use the simulators that Apple provides. There will be a landing page starting next Tuesday for this course, and you'll get reminders from thank you for attending or sorry we missed you to tell you where the landing page is. The registration page is the page that has the information about the learning series, and this landing page will have things like this Word document in PDF format for you to have the course notes. And as we move along, it'll have additional lessons if you want to get ahead. Right now we have lesson 1 all laid out in about 38 pages. The landing page will also have links to any examples that aren't standard demos or so simple that you can just do them yourselves. So many examples or demos that we use in the course, you'll find those in zip files or links to the zip files in the landing page as well. I know that some of you are doing other things while you're taking this course over the next 9 weeks. You have other work. So I'm going to try not to give you too much homework. But at the end of each course, I'll have some suggestions for things that you might do, articles you might read, videos to help amplify your learning, and maybe get you ready for the next lesson as well. This course book is made up of lots of different materials, including materials that are online. In particular, I took as a starting point our FireMonkey Quick Start Guide, which is in our doc wiki in multiple pages on the Embarcadero doc wiki, and there's a link there to the quick start guide, and that has links. In this course book, I'm trying to lay everything out linearly, so you don't have to go. But occasionally, when there's topics that I don't want to have to go into detail, like things on Apple's site or some other site, the links will be there for you as well. There's articles on the developer network. We have our RAD in action and database in action pages, the Embarcadero blogs, lots of articles. There's a FireMonkey portal. There's lots of videos from our Code Rage sessions that took place last October, and also the Delphi 24 hours event that we took place. Lots of videos that will help you in Windows and Mac development as well. Let's get started. And again, this part is an introduction to Windows and Mac development using FireMonkey. And on the product page, there is a whole host of information about the features and benefits of doing Windows and Mac development with one code base. And you just go to the FireMonkey product page and you'll have all sorts of information. So imagine one code base to be able to build Windows and Macintosh developments in both high definition and 3D visualizations with native code on all the platforms for Windows, Mac, and for Delphi developers, iOS as well. So native code, visual design, component-based development for all those platforms with one set of code. Maybe you have to do certain if-defs if you're talking specifically to the Windows or to the Macintosh platform, and some if-defs for now if you're doing iOS development, and more about that in a little bit. The focus is on allowing you to build great-looking and highly interactive applications that run on Windows, Mac, and iOS with all the performance of native code and all the power of using not only the CPU, but the GPU as well, the graphic processing unit, for your Macintosh and your Windows development. But the great thing about FireMonkey and doing Windows and Mac development is if you write to FireMonkey, if you write to FireMonkey's coordinate system, if you use FireMonkey's components, we will have FireMonkey ported to lots of different platforms besides the ones that we have today over the coming years. Right to that, it will do the right thing on all of the platforms for you. We don't block you from anything that goes on in the underlying platform. The APIs for Macintosh, the APIs for Windows are all available. There's a canvas object in FireMonkey, so you can do things at the canvas, but if you need to go lower and do something special, or if you need to write to specific platform APIs, you have full control and full access to all of those things. Along with Windows and Macintosh development, you may have to build database applications where you need to connect to data. Maybe it's a data stream, maybe it's an XML feed, maybe it's something coming from a service, or maybe it's just connecting to Oracle, Microsoft, MySQL, our own Interbase database, Firebird database, Sybase database. We have our DB Express technology, and FireMonkey works completely with DB Express on Windows and Mac so that you can get to the databases that you need to get to. Since it's component-based, you drag and drop in the designer, you write a little bit of code for your business logic, you can build applications fast, quick, in our IDE with our tools, and again, build those things for Windows and Macintosh. A little bit about FireMonkey, it's native code. It uses the underlying GPU or the underlying 2D and 2D graphics systems, DirectX on Windows, the core graphics library on Macintosh, and the core graphics library on iOS. For 3D, we use Direct 3D on Windows. We use OpenGL and OpenGLES on Mac and iOS. FireMonkey does all of that under the covers, and if you're doing certain operations, and we'll see that in later lessons on effects and animations and so on, where FireMonkey is going direct to the GPU using a technology called Pixel Shader API, where the GPU is doing all the work to do the special effects, for example. So let's start with getting you ready. I want to make sure, and this lesson is also about getting XZ2 on your machine, whether it's a purchased version that you have of Red Studio or Delphi, or it's the trial edition. In the installation information that's available and on the download page and on the data sheets, we tell you what the IDE runs on, what requirements you need. We go back to XP for hosting the IDE, XP Home or Professional, Windows Vista, Windows 7. It can also run on Windows Server 2000 and later. For OS 10, we use our Windows IDE environment and connect to the Macintosh to be able to deploy, debug, and run applications on Macintosh using our own compilers for Delphi and C++ Builder. And then if you need to get to iOS, then we leverage the Xcode environment, and you'll see that a little bit later as we're doing it. You can use an older version of Xcode, but we recommend that you use the latest version, especially it's required if you're using OS X Lion, where you need to use Xcode 4.2.3 or later. I'm using 4.3. So the first thing is there's several ways to install XE2. If you purchase the product, you might have gotten the electronic software download or ESD version. You might have downloaded the ISO file and burnt your own DVD. Have the ESD paid version, you'll get a small executable, and you can run that executable, and it will connect to our servers and pull down the rest of the files that are needed in the install based on what you're trying to build. If you have a network license that was purchased or it's managed by AppWave, then there's information about how to install from a deployment server, license server there. If you get it by a media kit, you'll get a set of DVDs that you can stick in, or you can copy those files to a directory on your network and then run them. If you purchase and you're given a download URL, then you just get the setup exe, download it, run it, and then you follow the install instructions. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make an assumption that everyone is going to download the trial edition. But again, these steps are the same whether it's a trial edition or whether it's a purchased edition. And there's different trial downloads that are available. There's a Delphi XE2 Architect, CBuilder Architect, and Rad Studio XE2 Architect. These are the full Architect editions. So you get all the multi-tier capabilities of DataSnap. You get to talk to all the databases. It's a 30-day trial, and it's the full product, with the exception of we don't ship the command line tools, we don't ship the source code to the runtime libraries or to VCL and FireMonkey, and some other of the third-party bundle tools are not included as well. And to do that, you go to the FireMonkey download page. There's a link for the trial or purchase from the FireMonkey product page, and you then see a list of 3, because you might be choosing a language or choosing Rad Studio. Click on the 30-day trial, and it gets you going. And then you select the product that you want, click download. You'll get this little export restrictions pop-up window. You just click agree, and then it will download a zip file, which is, in my case, I chose Rad Studio, ESD trial. We get the zip file. I'll unzip that zip file and then start the setup program. At the same time, it'll ask you to either sign in to our developer network or to register with the developer network. And we do that so that you can give us your email address so that we can send you the trial key. If you already have an EDN account, then just log in with your username and password, and you'll get sent your trial key, or you can key in the information that's in the box there. In the course book, it'll step you through the steps of installing. Here where I choose, do I just want to install Delphi as part of Rad Studio or both languages? Just like other installs, you can turn off the things you don't need to install. Then I will register the product. I'll key in my login name for the developer network and the password that I created or that I already had. I'll put my serial number that was given to me in the email, and then I go through the install steps. And if everything is installed, then you'll see this splash screen come up when you start the Rad Studio IDE. If you only install Delphi XE2 Architect trial, it'll say Delphi XE2 Architect, 30 days remaining. And the 30-day time starts from the moment that you do the installation of the software, not when you get the key. So if you get the key and you wait a couple weeks, that's fine. And then I can do the help about box, and I can see that I've got the latest version, which is XE2 Update 4. File new FireMonkey HD Delphi, hit run, and that's a good way to see that you have a working install for the IDE. This is a 32-bit application. And again, there's additional instructions in the doc wiki for installation notes for XE2 as well. Installing Interbase XE2 Developer Edition, I click on the button that's in the main install screen for the trial. Interbase XE Developer Edition comes with the trials for Delphi, C++, and Rad Studio. It's in all of them. I click on the Install Interbase Developer Edition. It takes me to where there's a zip file I can download, either for 32-bit or 64-bit version of Interbase Server. And then I key in my username and password. It tells me the key that I'm to use for my developer edition on the download page that we link to when you click on the button. So you register that as well. And we're going to cover much more about database development in Lesson 6, and we'll be using Interbase as part of that, and also connecting to other databases. Now, there's two other parts that we have to pay attention to in the installation. If you want to do Macintosh development, or if you want to do Windows development and debugging and deployment to a remote machine or to another machine from your development environment. And we call this our Platform Assistant. And the Platform Assistant helps the IDE not only with development and debugging, but also with deploying to applications, especially on Macintosh. Since we're a Windows-based IDE, we have to have a way to sit in the Windows IDE, do your development, and then have the application get sent over to the Macintosh and run over there, and also be able to be debugged. The Platform Assistant communicates through TCP/IP to a Platform Assistant server, we call it PA server, that runs on your target machine. We have versions of the Platform Assistant server for 32-bit Windows, 64-bit Windows, and for the Macintosh. So inside of your RAD Studio install directory, there's a folder called PA server. Let's go and take a look at it. Here's my install, program files, Embarcadero, RAD Studio, RAD 9.0 is the directory. So down here in the PA server folder, there are two files. There's a zip file, which contains the installer for the Macintosh. So we would copy this over, and you'll see the notes in a moment. If I want to deploy the PA server on a Windows machine, I would just take this setup PA server executable and run it on whatever remote machines, including maybe a Windows instance running in Amazon Cloud or Microsoft Windows Azure Cloud. You'd run that over there, set it up, and then you can talk from the IDE to your target machine. And this zip file, again, is for the Macintosh, so you copy that over. I've got a shared folder over here on my Macintosh through VMware where I have demos and other things. We copy the zip file over there, and there's an install for the PA server on the Macintosh. You need to know that the Platform Assistant or the PA server is connected to the IDE. So if something changes in the IDE and you download and install a new IDE, most likely you'll need to uninstall and reinstall the Platform Assistant on the target platforms that you're going to do. Now, if you're going to use everything on your own machine, you don't need to do anything with a platform server. It's not needed. The IDE knows how to debug a 32-bit and a 64-bit Windows application on the machine that you're running the IDE on. It's only if you need to talk remotely. If you get a new version of the IDE, make sure you take the Platform Assistant server that's in that subdirectory and install it on your target machines, because there may have been a change in the protocol or something else. If you don't update your PA server and something changed, you'll get an error message that the IDE can't talk to the PA server, and it'll remind you to update and reinstall the platform server. And there's notes in the course book about uninstalling and reinstalling the Platform Assistant on Windows and on Macintosh. But for Macintosh, I need the PA server. So over on my Macintosh, I have run the PA server application. I have a little symbolic link here, and there's some command line options for starting the PA server, like setting the port, setting some other information. There's also some commands inside of the PA server once it's running, so we can see where's my scratch directory. So it's in users, deinterstimony application. So let's go to users. Let's see, where's deinterstimony, and I can go to applications, Embarcadero, PA server, and here's the PA server code. It's right down here, the application, and my scratch directory is down here, and the scratch directory will actually contain applications, and that's where the PA server will store them. You can set your own scratch directory either in a command line parameter for the PA server on Mac, or you can do it that way, or there's a configuration file you can create that the PA server will look for, and then you can set all your options in that one. And so here are running compiled applications compiled by our Windows IDE and deployed to the Macintosh. We could just run one of them over here, and we'll see more about that later as well. And again, the PA server takes commands from the IDE for debugging. It's that same experience that you're used to inside the Windows IDE, where you say run or step in the debugger. You don't know, other than you're looking at a Macintosh screen. The IDE thinks it's just talking to the machine, and it's stepping. You get the CPU view, you get the source code view, and so on. Now, when you start the PA server on the Macintosh, it will pop up a message saying that the developer tools access system is trying to do something. For that session, meaning when you start up your Macintosh, you need to key in your administrative password, and then the PA server can can continue and listen. In this case, it's listening on port 64211. All right. So it only comes up the first time you run the platform assistant during your session on the Macintosh. Again, there are command lines options for the platform server on Windows and on Macintosh where you can specify the port number that you want to have the ID communicate through. Maybe you only have certain ports that are open. For example, if you're running in a cloud infrastructure, you can set the scratch directory, you can set the password, remote password login, and other configuration files as well. And to get the list of commands for the command line, just put PA server-help. If you're running the PA server, then just hit the letter H, and it'll display the commands that are available while the PA server is running. And there it is running in a window, hitting the letter H and getting those commands, hitting P to get the port number, and S to get the scratch directory. To test your PA server installation, it's pretty simple. You're just going to create a project inside the IDE, set the platform to Mac OS X. So let's do that. Let's go into the IDE, File, New. Let's do a FireMonkey HD application for Delphi. And then it gives me a target platform over in the project window. It says, oh, Windows 32, so we can verify that indeed our application runs on Windows. There it is. And now we can also say, let's right mouse click on the target platform, say Add Platform. With Delphi, we get choices of 64-bit and also OS X or OS X. For the platform, you can create or assign a remote profile. And what a remote profile does is it specifies information about where my Macintosh is that I'm going to talk to. So I've got two different configurations here. One is it's an OS X host, either by IP address or its name. So my Macintosh is called Samwise Gamgee, and what port address I'm going to talk to. And that's basically what you need to know for setting up a platform. In the notes, I create one and show you how to create one in the course book as well. So once I've done that, I'll just say run the application. And now it's going to compile using the Delphi for Macintosh compiler. So you see OS X32. And if I switch over to my Macintosh, and if I have the platform assistant running, I have a Macintosh application running over my Macintosh. So that's all it takes to verify that you've got the platform assistant working, like how to create a remote profile. And you can create new ones, and you can have multiple ones. You might be building an application that you need to run on a 32-bit Windows remote target, a 64-bit Windows remote target, a Macintosh target, an Amazon Cloud target. You create multiple targets, and then remote profiles. Select the active profile, do your development, do your compiling, do your deploying, do your debugging. Now, there's also a deployment option under the project window, and here, by default, when you create a remote target, it will place links to certain files that are required for that project, and then you can add other files that you want to deploy, and the ID will deploy them. For example, maybe you need a data file or an XML file or some bitmap files over on the target platform. You can click this little Add Files button, and then you can navigate to wherever you are, add those files into this list of project deployment options. And those will get sent when the executable, any DLLs, and other things. We also have a link here for feature files, so files that the IDE knows about. For example, DB Express drivers that your client might need to talk to database servers. If you're using client dataset, the Midas library, and you can decide which version you need to deploy. There's a set of runtime libraries we have as part of building an application, and you can add, again, any other files that you need as well. So once you've verified that you can indeed create a project, a simple project that's empty, test it on 32-bit Windows, 64-bit Windows for Delphi, add a new platform by right-mouse clicking on the target platform, choose OS X, click the Add button, select Remote Profile for OS X, give it a name, and set the host name that you're talking to on your target, the port number. If you want to put a password, make sure you have that's if you set a password on the PA server, put that same password here, and then you can click the Test Connection button to make sure that it's okay. You can also update by right-mouse click and choosing Edit, and again, you can go and test the connection, and it says it succeeds. So you can right-mouse click and create a new profile, or you can edit an existing profile. And once that's done, it'll say Connection Succeeded, and then you run it, and it's a Macintosh. How do we know it's a Macintosh when it's just an empty window with a form caption? It's got these little Macintosh-looking close, minimize, and maximize colored button. If you're going to do iOS development with Delphi, you also need to make sure that you build the FireMonkey version for iOS and some runtime libraries for iOS as well. And the reason you need to do that is that FireMonkey for iOS currently uses the Xcode IDE and the free Pascal compiler. And so we have a version of FireMonkey that's compatible with the free Pascal compiler. We actually build a specific version of the free Pascal compiler. Eventually, we'll have our own Delphi compiler that generates code for ARM processors. And since we don't have that today, we're leveraging the free Pascal. But eventually, in the future, we'll have a Delphi compiler that generates not only Intel code, but generates ARM code. And then we will replace the need for having to use a free Pascal. So there's notes in here about how to get Xcode and how to join the iOS developer program. It's $99 a year for Apple to be able to get the tools and be able to sell applications through their App Store. So $99, you can get that information through the iOS developer program on developer.apple.com. They have a Macintosh program and an iOS program that you can join. Inside of the install directory, there's another folder called FireMonkey-iOS. And in FireMonkey iOS, there's an install file, a DMG file, that you will copy over to your Macintosh. And again, I'm on VMware, so I copy this over to my Drive Z or your shared folder. There's an installer that runs, and what it does is it creates a version of Free Pascal. It compiles FireMonkey for iOS on the Macintosh, creates all the right libraries and files that are required, and then the Pascal compiler and the iOS libraries work with the Xcode that you have installed. You can also build parts of your iOS applications in the Windows IDE, and you can actually run parts of them as long as you're not doing any iOS-specific calls. You can put if-defs around those so you can test parts of your, for example, button clicks or other things on Windows, but you'll need to be able to compile and run the simulator on the Mac, and also then that's how through Xcode you connect to your devices, your iPhone, your iPod Touch, and your iPad to test and debug on the devices themselves, and then eventually sell it if you need to inside the store. So you want to set up autosave. There's a utility that we have called DPR to Xcode. It's in the bin folder of your install. And what it does is we need to be able to create an Xcode version of the project and add a few other files like the splash screen that they're using for iOS and so on. And the way we do that is run this DPR to Xcode utility. You can run it from the command line. What we tell you to do is add it to the IDE as a tool transfer menu. So I have here a how to set up the tool properties for a new one called Export to Xcode. Here's the executable DPR to Xcode.exe, the name of your project. And here, let me go to the IDE, File New, FireMonkey HD iOS application. Here's my little form. I can actually, I'm not doing anything right now, so I can run this on Windows. And it just is a blank, but if we had buttons and so on, it seems to work. And then on tool transfer, I've got configure tools. I've got export to Xcode. I've got a name. It's going to run DPR to Xcode, and with these parameters, which is the path over on our Macintosh where the FireMonkey library was created. Of course, I need to save all of this over to my shared folder, so I've got an iOS directory here, and let's create a folder called test. Let's save everything over there, because of course Xcode needs to get to the same thing. So if I go and compile this, and now let's run DPR to Xcode again. Basically, if you add something to your project, another source file, some kind of resource or other kind of file, you need to run export to Xcode to update that Xcode project. Now I'll go and switch back to my Macintosh, and I will run Xcode. And in my demos folder, if I look at this under iOS, I've got that test folder here. And inside of it, there is an Xcode subfolder. So here's the source files the IDE knows about. Here's what was created by export to Xcode. There's the Xcode project, some PNGs for splash screens, a little extra information that's needed to build an application. Let's go and say File, Open Project. And let's go and pick that test version. It knows it's an Xcode. You can up here choose, if I had my devices plugged in, they'd show up, but I'm going to use the iPhone 5.1 simulator. Here's the project. All the source code is my source code for my Delphi application. hit the run button. It will compile it. This is showing that I can use Xcode plus the FireMonkey library for iOS that was compiled, plus the free Pascal compiler, which is hooked in for you automatically. And then it will run the simulator, and once that's done, the simulator will come up, and I'll have that empty form. Okay, let me, it's here, and there's my little iOS application built with Delphi and FireMonkey, recompiled using the free Pascal compiler. You run export to Xcode, it generates this extra subdirectory stuff for your application. Click the run button in Xcode, the simulator comes up, or your device, and you get a window like this, which is an empty starting iOS. Then you know that everything is set for your configuration, both for Windows development, Macintosh development, and iOS development with Delphi. So in this lesson, you've learned about Windows and Mac, building with our ID and with FireMonkey Business Application, how to install and make sure your configuration for the platform assistant server is there, and also how to build, set the configuration for iOS development as well. And of course, there's other information for the Apple developer programs, so you can get Xcode as well. In lesson 2, we're going to create our first Windows and Macintosh desktop applications using Delphi, so stay tuned for that. Things for you to consider doing. Go and revisit, if you haven't looked before, at the FireMonkey datasheet. Go to the doc wiki. There's information about the FireMonkey application platform, some new capabilities for Delphi XV2 in the doc wiki. There's an article about building Windows and Mac development, white papers and videos. There's a video building your first Delphi and FireMonkey HD applications that's available on EDN. And there's an Interbase Labs, which has a step-by-step tutorial how to install and use Interbase as well. And in the course book, when you get it starting on Tuesday, little self-check quiz in each lesson, and the answers are down at the bottom as well.